What's up guys, it's Ash here and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for a formation that I've never really posted on this channel, and that is the 4-2-4. Now with the 4-2-4, I primarily used it on pro clubs with my friends, and I've started to integrate it into Ultimate Team because I genuinely really like the formation. It's like a 4-4-2, but the right mid and left mid are way more aggressive and get way more involved, so it's super good in attack and defense, which is why I do actually really like it. But just before we get started though guys, I would very much appreciate it if you could drop it a thumbs up, as it does really help me out. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to have this on balance. This is because you still have the best control of your defense, so when you need to press, you're able to press, and then when you want to drop off, be a little bit more passive, you're also able to do that. So having this on balance is super important in my opinion, as it does give you the most control in defense. Moving on to the defensive width guys, I like to have this on 35. The reason for this is so we can primarily defend in a nice, narrow and compact shape, which will stop the opponents being able to run right through you and pass right through the middle of your team. Super important to have a nice narrow defense. The reason we don't lower it anymore though is because it's important to at least have a bit of natural width to cover the wider areas in case an opponent tries an attack down the wing. Moving on to the depth guys, I like to have this on 65. This is so we can win the ball nice and high up the pitch, but we don't have the depth crazy high, otherwise one through ball will absolutely destroy us. So we want to have a nice high defensive line, but at the same time we don't want it to be too high. A lot of people like to go for a really low depth, but I'm not a big fan because it always feels like you're under constant pressure and you're always pinned inside your own box. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I like to have this on balance. This is because it's the most consistent and varied form of build-up. When you need to play slowly, you're able to do that. When you want to play a bit faster, you're also able to do that. So it does give you the greatest variety and control in your build-up compared to the other settings. For example, if you use fast build-up, you're always going to have to play quickly, and if you use slow build-up, you're always going to have to play slowly. But with balance, you can pick and choose when you want to play faster and when you want to play a bit slower. Now moving on to chance creation guys, as always I suggest using direct passing. This is because it's by far the most meta option in the game. Basically your attacking players will bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the very overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also make the extra movements in the box so you can get off that extra pass to guarantee the goals. Direct passing is an absolute must in my opinion. But the attacking width guys, I like to have this on about 47. It's not a specific number you need to use, but the reason I go for something in this range is because even though it's a wider formation, I don't like having crazy width, otherwise it feels like your players are way too far apart. And then on the flip side, if you have it too low, your team becomes too narrow and it feels like a 4-2-2. So I kind of like to go for something in between with like 47 width, so you get like a nice distance between your players, but it's not too wide at the same time. Moving on to players in box guys, I like to have this on 5. This is so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but at the same time we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we're always getting counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a set piece routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. A link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, honestly it's quite self-explanatory, but I'm still going to give you guys like a basic guideline on the types of players you want to use, because a lot of people always ask what types of players should I use in which position. So I'm just going to clear some of that up for you now. So in the two striker positions, I like to go for like a balance between the two players. So I like to have like a more clinical finisher player on one side and then a more creative player on the other side. This is so we have a bit of variation in the attack, a bit of variety I should say, because if you just use like two out and out strikers like an Erling Haaland and a Harry Kane, you're very restricted because you're always just going to have to cross to the players or through ball to them because they don't really have much else to them. It's very one-dimensional. So I like to implement a creative player in one of the positions so you can do a lot more in the attack and become a lot less predictable. It's not something you have to do, but it is something I like to do personally. Now moving on to the right winger and the left winger, this is very self-explanatory. You just need to use the best winger style players you can. Obviously players with very good pace and good dribbling, 5-star skills if you can get it, and even good shooting as well, because they will often get into the penalty area. But yeah, there's not too much to say about the wingers. Moving on to the two centre centre mids, I also like to go for a balance between the two. So I like to have one more defensive minded player in the left centre mid spot. This is somebody that is going to stay back and ensure that we're very good defensively. So I would suggest somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in defence and they're not too bothered about going forward. And then in the right centre mid spot, I like to go for a more box to box style player. This is somebody that is going to attack and defend. So I would suggest somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in both attack and defense. Moving on to the left back and the right back, I kind of like to go for a balance between the two, but again, this is down to preference. I like to go for one more technical player in the left back position, someone that's a bit better on the ball. Then in the right back position, I like to go for somebody that is more defensively solid, but honestly, it really doesn't matter. You can use whoever you want to. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these just need to be the meta players. There's not too much to say about them. Moving on to the player instructions, guys. On both of the strikers, I like to have them on stay central, mixed attack, and come back on defense. The reason we have them on stay central is pretty self-explanatory. We don't need these players covering the wide areas, as we've already got wingers, so those spaces are already covered. We want them to be in the middle. We want them to be in the correct positions where the strikers should be. We also have them on mixed attack, so you get a lot more out of the players. I feel like if you have them on getting behind, they're very one-dimensional. They always make the same runs, and it's super predictable for your opponent, so I don't really like it. So mixed attack's better, as I feel like they get more involved in the build-up and they just do a lot more. We also have them on comeback on defense, so when we lose the ball and we're defending, they sit a bit closer to the rest of the team. This actually makes it easier to build up when we win the ball back, because the team is closer together. It's easier to string some passes together. If you have them on basic defensive support, sometimes it can feel like these players are very far apart from the rest of the team, which is why we have them on comeback on defense. Moving on to the right wing and the left winger, we have them on comeback on defense and get into the box across. We have them on comeback on defense, so this will actually defend in a 4-4-2. This is super important, because if we don't have these wingers coming back to defend, then there is massive gaps down the wing, which is super easy for your opponent to just attack. So we don't want that. We want them on comeback on defense, so the left winger will come back to defend as a left mid, and the right winger will come back to defend as a right mid, just so we have good coverage of the wide areas when our opponent is on the attack. We also have them on get into the box across, so they're not hesitant to get into the penalty area when we are in the penalty box. If you have them on balance crossing runs, sometimes they can be a little bit hesitant, a little bit static, and they don't do too much. So putting them on get into the box across gives you a better chance of scoring inside the penalty box, in my opinion. Now moving on to the left centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back and cover centre. We have him on stay back because obviously he's defensive, we don't want him flying forward, and then we have him on cover centre, so he does defend those central areas. Moving on to the right centre mid, where we've got a more box to box style player, we have him on the default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because he's a box to box player, so we don't really want to restrict him all that much. We kind of want him to do a bit of everything, so we kind of just let him do whatever he wants. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he does defend those central areas. Now moving on to the fullbacks, I have them both on stay back and overlap. We have them on stay back and overlap because we don't want these players going forward all the time. We already have enough width with the wingers, so we don't really need the fullbacks to always go flying forward. We have them on the overlap run type though, so if we do send them on a run forward, they will contribute and make the overlapping runs to add extra width. If you guys are feeling like proper spicy and you want to go super aggressive, you can put one of them on balanced attack and overlap if you like, but it's not a complete requirement. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these are on the default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-4. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a like, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.